bit off of the first of it. Okay. So we're gonna make a vase that kind of looks like a calla lily. For those of you on the YouTubes, I don't know if you can see it, but that's what we're gonna make today. And I will need that tripod that we're using for my photo here eventually. It's a torch. That's what the tripod is for that picture. Anyway, okay, so we'll start off by doing everything that we normally do. Use our body to really get some leverage on the clay. Bring up a nice tall cone.
How many pounds do you have?
This is 3 pounds. It's a reasonable amount. I can get enough height out of it. It needs to be a pretty tall, narrow thing to start. Oops, let's go all the way down. If I want to bring up another cone, I always leave this point. The way that I leave the point is the angle that I press down is not flat, it's a slight angle. I leave a point at the top. Bring up another cone. It's fine, Kat. Just all right, get good and centered. All right, so I'm thinking about sort of order of operations with this thing. If I try to make a bulbous thing and then try to flare out the rim, it's probably going to want to collapse on itself. So a lot of times normally what we do is do the flare kind of towards the end. I'm going to think about doing the flare as I'm making it, and then I'll squeeze in the bottleneck at the very end. Alright, so I'm going to drop the hole. I'm going to keep it pretty narrow.
Is that porcelain?
This is the B mix. Just trying to get rid of that bag of B mix that I got a couple days ago. And I'm not going to be trimming this. This looks like it'd be a pain in the butt to trim, so just going to go down to 1/4 of an inch. Measure it if I wanted to, but I don't think I need to. It feels pretty about the right depth. I'm going to bring up my volcano. Okay, I'm really kind of pushing with this, and I'm really pulling back like that. It ends up kind of going oblong. I don't know if you can really see that in the video, in that perspective. All right, so I recenter the top. I can either do it with my thumb, oops, or with my, oops. Just took a little clay off the top there. Try not to do that. Make sure it's nice and centered. Grab on. This first pull is always going to be up and in. Oops. And slip there. Make a groove. Nice deep groove there. And this one, as I go up, I'm going to start trying to bring this rim out. Hopefully I don't collapse the whole cylinder while I do it, because it needs to have a pretty good flare. So what I'm doing is, instead of rotating my thumb down, I'm rotating it up a little bit in hopes that I can get this rim to flare just a little bit at this point. Trying to see how much flare I need. Might not be as much as originally anticipated. lots of water. Don't tell them you can't. Don't believe people when they say you're not supposed to use water. Scrape it off later. So I'm getting this flare out first. Water out of the inside. Get the excess clay off the outside. Start our compressing. Round side and round side. And try not to bring this part out too much yet. Got the flare started. It's really hard to get flare out if you have it kind of going up and in. So I like to get that started pretty early on if I'm really expecting to do a big flare. You can do a little bit of flare later, but if you need to do a lot of flare, start it early. Alright, now we're going to do the bottom part of the body, which is pretty far out there. I'm going to go up a little ways, a little bit further in proportion than it might seem like I need to. But as I bring this out, it's going to get shorter. It'll start looking like a Greek vase here. I'm just working the bottom part. I'm not going to leave the bottom as low as the photo. I'm going to leave a little bit of space underneath it. Oh, got a little chatter on the inside. Let's get tools wet again.
Did the grip get caught?
Yeah. Grip just chattered a little bit there. Hands are too big. Should have been 5 pounds. A little bigger piece. Alright, let's get this belly out a little further here. Try not to collapse it. Alright. That's probably fine for now. Go a little further maybe. The photo, like this, comes out a tiny bit further than what I have it, so try to get it out a little further. There. Alright, so now I have a problem. I got a bunch of weight pushing down on the piece. Now I'm going to need that torch. I have 2 cantilevers. I have a cantilever under here and I have a cantilever right there. So I'm doing this directly on the aluminum wheel head. If you have a plastic bat, you be careful you don't heat up the plastic bat. What?
It smells funny when you do that.
All right, we're just gonna give it maybe 30 seconds or so for that water to evaporate off of there. Give me the stability that I'm looking for. Initially, you're just getting the water off the surface, but when you heat it up, that water will sort of escape and stiffen it up a little bit. I specifically didn't torch this part, this vertical, right where it starts to go vertical, because I need that clay to be able to go in. I'll probably have to maybe torch it just a little bit more. Could you do this without torching? Probably. But since this is not a shape that I normally throw, I'm torching it. All right. All right, so hopefully it's good enough. So we have a nice flare at the top. I'm not too worried about how uneven the rim is, because we're gonna be cutting it anyway. So I'm just gonna really carefully add some water to this. I don't wanna add any water to the shoulder. I just wanna add water to the side of the piece. Maybe on the inside here too. I'll be going in and maybe pulling it a little bit. So I'm gonna do this the same as I would do for a normal bottle. Make the U, go Utes, turn it like that. And then I'm gonna use the tips of my index and thumb and the back of my middle finger. I'm gonna squeeze in, I'm gonna create that shoulder going up. Don't create it going straight in. I'm gonna create it slightly going up, and then I'm gonna squeeze it, and then I'm gonna come out like this. So I need to make sure my clay is wet enough for me to do that. Try not to drip too much. I have a little dripping going on there. I'll scrape that off. Okay, here it goes. Oops. Nothing like throwing the metal rib of death in there. Okay, squeeze, create your shoulder. Lift. All right, so it's always like adventure trying to find your metal rib in the bottom of your bucket. Arguably worse than the needle tool.
Yeah, I used to always try and find my pin tool in there. Why?
Are you pushing in at all as you do this?
Yeah, I am. See if I can do this without collapsing it. I have a little bit of a spot there. This has a red handle. It's kind of on the caliper kind of area. It's like a red handle thing with a little white thing at the end. Perfect. Thank you.
What would one call that?
I think this is just called a bump. There's like a bump, and then there's one called a baby bump. So I'm just gonna kind of push up here. Try to get rid of that little collapse there. Without collapsing the whole thing, hopefully. Uh-oh. Didn't exactly work as planned. Let's try this thing now. Okay. So we're just gonna... It looks worse than it actually is here. touching that area there. Hopefully it doesn't go down on me. Collapse.
Doesn't sound right.
I know. It's hard to think about talking when you're trying to think about throwing. Yeah, it doesn't, the photo doesn't have like a really super smooth transition, so I'm not super concerned about that. I do need to have enough clay to wrap around. I think this actually needs to go out a bit further here. Normally, I would be pretty persistent about trying to get this curve just perfect. Because I'm going to be cutting it. I'm not going to worry too much about getting that curve just right. Just want to make sure that I have enough clay. Oh, it's stuck. Yeah, it's kind of looking like a spittoon right now. All right. Sure. Scrape a little of that slip off of there. I don't dry it out too much because I want it to be flexible, but I also want it to hold its shape, so it's sort of a little precarious. All right, so this cut kind of goes diagonal here. So the question is, maybe that cut doesn't go all the way down into the form, it just goes diagonally down this way. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that on first. Boy, I think I need a lot more of this part here. I guess I can add some later. So this starts way up here. Let's draw it on with something that's not so bulky. Comes around. Wait. Just down. Good way to do this on a kick wheel. This one is basically just going to kind of swoop around. Like so. don't know if you can see that. This one's kind of a swooping curve that kind of goes down a diagonal, and this one just kind of goes, it swoops down a little bit, but it just kind of goes straight over. You know, is this gonna hold up? Probably not. Let's do a little bit more of this. All right, we're gonna go for it. I might regret this, but
It's only clay.
it's only clay.
Gonna fall off.
That's okay. Getting rid of most of that. Oh, I guess I can use my chamois here. Yeah, I'm seeing that. Definitely could have put a bigger flare on there. For now, we're going to smooth that out. Once I cut it, it's going to be a lot less supported. What's going on?
The rest of us are just watching it all, but some of us are clearly faint.
I gotta refine that a little bit. All right, moment of truth here. This is where it's gonna get a little tricky. It wasn't tricky before.
To us, it's been tricky all along, just saying.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I think this will be fine. Just gonna kind of roll this around and just try to stick that surface back to itself there. Give it a little bit of a wiggle. Maybe we should cut this down just a little bit further. Well, that. Now this one I'm going to kind of stick back to it a little bit. line. Let's open her back up here. Let's move that line this way. What could I use? Oh, let's just use this thing again. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing in the video.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should pick it up and bring it over here.
Just sort of cutting and sticking things together here. If you want to grab it and bring it around, I guess. So folks can see. So I ended up having to shift this line over just a little bit, and now I'm just adding a little doobie there. To kind of fix that little misplaced line. I don't want to do this when it's dry because then you end up it's more likely to crack if you do it when it's dry. It's a lot messier when you do it when it's wet, but the clay is a little bit more forgiving to being moved around and used a little bit when it's wet. Just got to make sure that it's just stiff enough to hold itself up. And then you get to a certain point where sometimes you just got to wait till it's a little bit stiffer to continue refining things. And instead of like trying to cut it and fold things over, you can fudge it just by taking a little coil. Hands off a little bit.
Oh, so you're making it appear to be.
Appear to be folded over, right? Yeah. Just a little water on there. The thing's pretty wet, and I have it scored, so I don't need it to be anything too crazy. You do slip and score. If I want to blend it, you don't want to get the coil too wet. So I'll just blend that coil in there. Create that line. Get my little smoothie tool out again. Here's the best smoothie tool. I gotta wait till it's a little bit stiffer to start really refining it, but I mean, it's not exactly, but on my first try, it's not too bad.
No, it's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
badass for
awesome.
the first try.
I know, but you know, after you kind of see something and you want to make it, you gotta try to figure out like the steps. And then you try it, and you're like, oh, okay, now I know where I need to. You know, I could have used 4 pounds and left this big, wide flare at the top, and that would have probably given me enough clay to do a proper, you know, to really get it as close as possible to the original photo there. Yeah, maybe it's not quite as exaggerated, this one, but in a couple more tries I could probably get it pretty close.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
Get a smaller smoothie tool.
This is me.
That-
Because I tried. First time.
And then I could
I
even
know
go
what
back.
to
I could even go back and maybe even here. Let's even do that. Are we still recording, or did you turn it off? Just gonna go through and maybe even give this a little bit of volume in there. What you can do, push the clay around, it's still wet. Just got to be aware of all of the little connections that you've done in the, you know, in the past. I just kind of broke that one. Looks like just stick it back together there. Yeah, glaze look back together. There we go.